Did the housing market just peak? Does that mean we're headed for another 2008?
Yet another sign of a cooling real estate market.
I have to warn you all, the U.S. housing crash has already started.
A housing bubble.
Home sales sliding for a sixth straight month.
The housing market has peaked.
2020 and 2021 were absolutely record-setting years for the real estate market. If there was a real estate record, it was absolutely smashed in those past 2 years. Home prices hit a record high, bidding wars and homes selling for over ask hit a record high, and home inventory hit an all-time low. This made for an absolute nightmare for home buyers, but on the flip side, it made for a pretty sweet situation for home sellers who were accepting offers. Offers that were tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking price. There were actually a set of home buyers in Maryland who were offered $50,000 over ask and a 2-week beach vacation. Others in Florida included tickets to Disney World, and a stranger offer included a $10,000 Bengal cat. And just an FYI, the offers that included the vacation and the Disney tickets, those were accepted. The offer that included the Bengal cat, not so much. Home prices increased an average of 10.4% in 2020, and then another 18.8% in 2021. With home prices running up the way they did, a lot of people are starting to question, is this all just a big bubble that's about to burst? Well, there's a couple things we have to consider. The first is inventory. Home inventory is finally on the rise after hitting an all-time low during the pandemic. Inventory levels are actually still lower than average, but they are slowly increasing. And experts predict that this trend will continue throughout the summer months, as the summer is the most popular time for people to buy and sell homes. Next up, pricing. Gone are the days of those brutal bidding wars. Nowadays, you don't have to worry that the home you like that you just got listed sold in 37 seconds flat before anyone had a chance to even tour it. I actually bought a home in 2021 and those bidding wars sucked. I remember calling my brother during this time and he literally gave me the best advice possible. He said, ask yourself, would you feel bad losing the home at this price? So basically, only offer what you think the home is truly worth. Market conditions be damned. And as you can imagine, we made lots of offers and a lot of them were rejected. I wasn't willing to participate in those silly bidding wars. We actually ended up finding a new development and we were one of the first ones to buy, which means we're gonna have construction for the next couple of years. But it also means it came with a discounted price for having to deal with that future construction. We also let our developer use our home as open house to sell subsequent units, which led to a further discount in price. At the end of the day, I'm really happy with the deal we got, and I can sleep at night knowing that I paid a fair price. I didn't have to deal with bidding wars because in the new development, they just sell one unit. Once that unit's sold, they move on to the next and so forth. I pretty much approached our home buying process with the attitude of, if I find something I like, great. If I don't, we'll rent, no big deal. And we're no longer seeing homes increase in price so drastically. In fact, in many markets, we're starting to see price cuts. As of April of this year, 15% of home sellers had to take price cuts on their listing. So that means that we're leaving that craziness of those prices that were going on in the pandemic, and we're entering a more normalized market. And also, interest rates are playing a factor. As the Fed is slowly increasing interest rates, mortgage rates are following suit. At the time of this filming, the 30-year fixed mortgage is hovering somewhere around 5.5% as a national average. About a year ago, it was 3.2%. That's a big deal for borrowers because if you can capture a lower interest rate, your money goes further. But also the flip side is true. For instance, if you buy a $400,000 home at today's interest rate, your payment would be roughly $1,800. But if you were to buy that same $400,000 home at a 3.2% interest rate, last year's rate, your mortgage payment would be just under $1,400 a month. Not only would you get to enjoy a smaller monthly payment, but the higher interest on the loan would literally cost you $157,000 more over the lifetime of the loan. So naturally, rising interest rates are going to help to sort of temper the real estate market. It's important to keep in mind that we've had really low interest rates for a very long time. We haven't seen 5% mortgage rates since 2009. However, back in 2009, a 5% mortgage rate was seen as a great rate at the time. Throughout the 2000s, a 6 and a 7% rate was actually the norm. In the 90s, rates ranged from 7 to 10%. In the 80s, they ranged from 10 to almost 17%. These low interest rates have made home buying much easier than it otherwise would have been in the past couple decades. But with home prices increasing roughly 30% in the past 2 years and average household income increasing only about 5%, a lot of home buyers aren't really feeling like the ball is in their court, because with interest rates increasing and already coupled with elevated home prices, home affordability still remains an issue for many. But just because interest rates are rising, that doesn't automatically trigger a decline in home sales. According to First American's chief economist Mark Fleming, history has shown that rising mortgage rates may take the steam out of rising house prices, but they don't necessarily trigger a decline. In today's housing market, demand for homes continues to outpace supply, which is keeping the pressure on house prices. So don't expect the price to decline. For many people, moving really isn't a simple "I want to." More often than not, it's an "I have to." A lot of people move because of new jobs or being relocated. A lot of people move because their home no longer fits their family dynamic. Perhaps they want to downsize because their adult children moved out of the nest, or maybe they have a growing family and a 2-bedroom no longer suits their needs. People will continue to buy new homes. They're probably not going to do it with the ferociousness that they did in December of 2021, but they will continue to buy new homes because at the end of the day, people need a place to live. All of these factors really point to a normalizing of the housing market. Economics writer Bill McBride, who infamously wrote about the impending housing bubble that led to the 2008 financial crisis way back in 2005, actually says that home inventory, or the number of homes for sale, is the best indicator of what's happening. My view has been that the market shift shows up first in inventory. As inventory increases, house price growth will slow. When there's more of a selection, it helps to keep prices in check. It's the basic law of supply and demand. The fundamentals that led to the increases in home prices up to the year 2008 and those that are leading to the increases in home price in recent time are inherently very different. Back in 2008 and years prior, people were actually being approved for loans they never should have been given. There was a deregulation that went on in the financial industry, which led to people with really subpar credit scores being approved for mortgages. Home prices were on the rise. A lot of buyers hoping to get a new home flooded the market because suddenly they were now approved by the bank to buy a home. In years prior, they never would have been. And sellers, seeing this new pool of buyers and seeing that their homes were rising in price, decided to flood the market with inventory. Ultimately, it was a lot of irrationality feeding upon itself and leading to a whoopsies on the national level. Instead, as the Fed attempts to get inflation rates under control, it's more likely that we're going to experience a cooling off or perhaps even a stall in the housing market, much like what we experienced back in the early 80s, because that resulted from the Fed trying to fight high inflation in the late 70s. With the basic fundamentals that led to the increase in home prices being so different, we can't just assume that we're reliving another 2008. As interest rates increase and housing inventory becomes more normal, we're likely to see a more normalization of the housing market. But honestly, a bit of cooling off in a market that's been totally on fire wouldn't really be a bad thing. Most likely, we're going to see prices still continue to increase, just at a lesser rate. Worst case scenario, they may even stall out and just stay stagnant for a bit. But an all-out decline really seems unlikely in our current economic environment. If you live in a major metro area that saw some huge price increases in the past few years, you may see some small price cuts going forward, but these are more likely to be region specific rather than national as a whole. It's important to remember that America is very diverse and there are different regions of the country that have very different real estate markets. For example, the real estate market in Washington, D.C. looks very different from the real estate market in rural Minnesota. If you bought a home and you plan on owning it for the long term, say at least 5 years, it's most likely still a really good buy. And in fact, many real estate companies are still predicting very strong growth for the year 2022. From Zillow to Fannie Mae, predictions for double-digit growth this year in home prices are still making headlines. After that, they're projecting a more tempered growth of about 3% for the year of 2023. More and more, it's looking like the touting of the housing bubble of 2022 is just headline fodder. Instead, it seems like it's all just gonna simmer out into normalcy, but it's just gonna take some time. And by some time, I mean several years to settle down. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. That's gonna wrap it up for me today. I'm really curious what you guys think is gonna happen to the housing market. I think right now, everyone has such different opinions, so I really like to hear what you guys have to say. So make sure to leave it in the comments down below. I read every single one and reply to as many as I possibly can. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I hope you have a good one. I'll see you next week. Bye. And those stupid, probably shouldn't say that. Currently, 30-year rates increases, attitude with the at the home you just who were just a few years prior, and then so these people were not good people. Not good people. Let's put it like that. That'll go over well.